The floor-to-ceiling windows of the Meridian Tower's 42nd floor conference room offered a breathtaking view of downtown Nashville. But Kenny Rogers found himself more interested in watching the young woman who had just entered the boardroom carrying a silver tray of coffee and pastries. At 78, Kenny had attended countless business meetings in his decades-long career. But something about this particular morning felt different, charged with an energy he couldn't quite identify. The woman appeared to be in her mid-20s, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around her with quiet observation. She wore the standard attire of support staff, a simple black skirt and white blouse. But there was something in her posture, in the careful way she carried herself, that suggested depths beyond her apparent role as someone who served coffee to executives. Kenny was in this glass-walled temple of corporate power because his longtime friend and business manager, Robert Chen, had insisted he attend this meeting with Apex Entertainment, one of Nashville's most successful music publishing companies. At his age, Kenny had little interest in new business ventures, but Robert had been mysteriously enthusiastic about this particular opportunity, speaking in vague terms about revolutionary approaches to music distribution and untapped markets that could change everything. The CEO of Apex Entertainment, Marcus Steinberg, was a man in his early 50s who wore expensive suits like armor and spoke in the clipped, efficient tones of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected millions of dollars. He had the kind of aggressive confidence that Kenny had encountered many times in the music industry. The certainty of someone who had never been poor, never been told no, never had to wonder whether next month's rent would be paid on time. Mr. Rogers, Steinberg was saying, gesturing toward the impressive presentation materials spread across the mahogany conference table. What we're proposing is a complete reimagining of how classic country music reaches emerging markets. Our research shows tremendous untapped potential in international streaming platforms, particularly in regions where American country music has never had significant penetration. Kenny nodded politely, though he found his attention drifting to the young woman, who was now carefully placing coffee cups around the table. There was something about her movements, precise, thoughtful, almost reverent in the way she handled even this simple task, that reminded him of musicians he had known, people for whom every gesture carried intention and meaning. The numbers are extraordinary, Steinberg continued, pointing to charts and graphs that showed projected revenue streams and market penetration statistics. We're talking about potentially expanding your catalog's reach by 300% over the next 5 years. The financial implications are... That's when it happened. The young woman had reached across the table to place a coffee cup near Steinberg's papers when her elbow caught the edge of the cream pitcher. Kenny watched in what seemed like slow motion as the pitcher tipped, sending a cascade of cream and coffee across the table, directly onto the meticulously prepared contracts and presentation materials that represented months of work and millions of dollars in potential deals. The silence that followed was deafening. Steinberg's face went through a series of transformations: shock, disbelief, and then a cold fury that made the temperature in the room seem to drop 10 degrees. The young woman stood frozen, her hand still extended toward the now-soaked documents, her face pale with horror at what she had just done. "You incompetent!" Steinberg began, his voice rising to a shout that would have been heard 3 floors down if not for the soundproof glass walls. "Do you have any idea what you've just destroyed? These contracts were worth millions. Months of negotiations, international partnerships, deals that took years to structure, and you—" "It was an accident," the young woman said quietly, her voice steady despite the obvious terror in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. Please, let me clean this up. Maybe the papers can be saved. Maybe—" "Saved?" Steinberg's laugh was harsh and bitter. "These were original documents with international signatures. Do you understand what that means? Do you have any comprehension of the financial catastrophe you've just created with your clumsiness?" Kenny watched this exchange with growing discomfort, recognizing in Steinberg's reaction the kind of cruelty that powerful people sometimes inflicted on those they perceived as beneath their notice. He had seen this dynamic many times in the music industry. Talented people crushed by executives who valued contracts more than human dignity. "Sir," the young woman tried again, pulling napkins from her tray to begin cleaning up the mess. "Please, I know this looks terrible, but I can help fix this. I understand contracts. I understand international music licensing. If you'll just give me a chance to—" "You understand contracts?" Steinberg's voice dripped with condescension. "You're a coffee girl. You serve beverages to people who actually understand business. The idea that you could comprehend the complexity of international entertainment law is laughable." That's when Kenny noticed something that made him lean forward in his chair. As the young woman dabbed at the coffee-stained papers, she was reading them, not just glancing at them, but actually absorbing the content with the kind of focused attention that suggested real comprehension. Her eyes moved across the legal language with the fluency of someone who understood what she was seeing. "Actually," the young woman said, her voice gaining strength despite Steinberg's intimidation, "I think there might be a problem with these contracts beyond the coffee stains." The room fell silent again, but this time the quality of the silence was different. Steinberg stared at her as if she had just claimed to be able to fly. "Excuse me?" "The international licensing clauses," she continued, pointing to a section of the contract that was still readable despite the coffee damage. "The territory definitions for Southeast Asian markets overlap with existing agreements that Mr. Rogers already has with Pacific Rim Entertainment. If these contracts were executed as written, it would create a legal conflict that could tie up Mr. Rogers' catalog in international courts for years." Kenny felt his eyebrows rise. He knew the young woman was right because he remembered signing those Pacific Rim agreements 3 years earlier. The detail she had just identified was exactly the kind of oversight that could turn a lucrative deal into a legal nightmare. Steinberg's face had gone from red with anger to pale with what Kenny recognized as dawning realization. That's impossible. Our legal team reviewed these contracts for months. Sometimes fresh eyes see things that familiar ones miss, the young woman said gently. I've been studying these agreements for weeks, trying to understand how they work. I noticed the overlap because I cross-referenced them with Mr. Rogers' existing publishing catalog. You've been studying them? Kenny asked quietly. Why? The young woman looked at him directly for the first time. And Kenny saw in her eyes the same hunger for knowledge, the same passionate curiosity about the music business that he remembered from his own early days in Nashville. Because I want to understand how this industry really works, she said. I'm not planning to serve coffee forever. Kenny turned to Steinberg. What's her name? Steinberg looked genuinely confused by the question, as if he had never considered that the coffee service staff might have names worth remembering. I'm not sure. She's new. My name is Elena Vasquez, the young woman said, extending her hand to Kenny with a dignity that contrasted sharply with Steinberg's dismissive treatment. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Rogers. Your music has been part of my family's life for as long as I can remember. Kenny shook her hand, noting the firmness of her grip and the intelligence in her expression. Elena, tell me something. What do you do when you're not serving coffee to executives? Elena hesitated, glancing nervously at Steinberg, who was still processing the fact that his million-dollar contracts contained a potentially catastrophic legal flaw that had been spotted by someone he had dismissed as hired help. I'm studying for the bar exam, Elena said quietly. I graduated from law school 6 months ago, but I haven't been able to find a position at any of the entertainment law firms in town. No experience, no connections, no one willing to take a chance on someone from my background. Your background? Kenny asked. First-generation college student. My parents immigrated from Mexico when I was 5. My father works construction, my mother cleans houses. I worked 3 jobs to pay for law school, and I'm working here now to pay off my student loans while I study for the bar. Kenny felt something shift in his chest, a recognition of the determination and sacrifice that Elena's words represented. Here was someone who had fought for every opportunity, who had worked her way through law school without the advantages that people like Steinberg took for granted, and who had just potentially saved Kenny from a disastrous business deal. Elena, Kenny said, would you mind looking at the rest of these contracts? I'd like to hear your thoughts on the other clauses. Steinberg sputtered. Mr. Rogers, with all due respect, we have qualified attorneys who missed a multi-million-dollar problem that Elena spotted in 30 seconds, Kenny interrupted gently but firmly. I think I'd like to hear what else she might have noticed. For the next hour, Elena went through the contracts page by page, identifying issues that ranged from minor technical problems to major structural flaws that could have cost Kenny millions in lost revenue and legal fees. She explained each problem clearly and concisely, and more importantly, she offered practical solutions that demonstrated a deep understanding of both legal principles and the practical realities of the music business. The most significant issue, Elena concluded, is that these contracts don't account for emerging streaming technologies. The language is based on distribution models that are already becoming obsolete. Mr. Rogers would be locked into revenue-sharing arrangements that favor traditional distribution channels right at the moment when the industry is shifting toward direct-to-consumer streaming platforms. Kenny looked at Robert, who had been silent throughout Elena's presentation, but was now nodding with obvious appreciation for her analysis. "Elena," Kenny said, "hypothetically, if you were restructuring these deals, how would you approach it?" Elena's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm of someone finally given the chance to demonstrate her capabilities. She began sketching out an alternative framework that preserved the international expansion opportunities while protecting Kenny's interests and adapting to technological changes in music distribution. As she spoke, Kenny found himself impressed not just by Elena's technical knowledge, but by her understanding of the creative and artistic aspects of the music business. She talked about preserving artistic integrity while maximizing commercial opportunities, about respecting the emotional connection between artists and their audiences while building sustainable business models. "The goal shouldn't just be to maximize short-term revenue," Elena explained. "It should be to build relationships and distribution channels that will serve Mr. Rogers' music for decades to come, while ensuring that the music reaches people who will genuinely appreciate and value it." When Elena finished her presentation, the room was quiet. Steinberg looked like a man who had just watched his carefully constructed empire revealed as a house of cards. Robert was making notes and nodding approvingly. Kenny was studying Elena with the same attention he had once given to promising young musicians. "Elena," Kenny said finally, "I have a proposition for you." "Yes, sir. I need someone to review my existing contracts and business arrangements. Someone who understands both the legal complexities and the creative realities of the music industry. Someone who's not afraid to tell me when my advisors are leading me in the wrong direction." Kenny glanced meaningfully at Steinberg. "Would you be interested in a position as my personal entertainment counsel?" Elena's coffee cup, which she had been holding throughout her presentation, slipped from her suddenly nerveless fingers and crashed to the floor, sending ceramic shards and coffee across the expensive carpet. This time, no one seemed to notice the mess. "Mr. Rogers," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," Kenny replied. "But I have one condition." Elena waited, barely breathing. "I want you to pass the bar exam first. I don't hire lawyers who aren't actually lawyers yet." Elena's face broke into a smile that transformed her entire appearance, revealing the joy and hope that had been hidden beneath layers of professional caution and economic anxiety. "I'll pass," she said with quiet confidence. "I've been preparing for 2 years. I'll pass." Elena did pass the bar exam, scoring in the top 5% of test takers in Tennessee. She also discovered, during her first month working for Kenny, that Steinberg had been systematically overcharging Kenny for services while under-delivering on promised results. The international deals that had seemed so lucrative were actually structured to benefit Apex Entertainment far more than Kenny, with revenue-sharing arrangements that were heavily skewed against the artist. More importantly, Elena uncovered evidence that Steinberg had been using Kenny's reputation and catalog as collateral for high-risk investments that could have left Kenny liable for millions in losses if they failed. The coffee spill that had seemed like such a disaster had actually prevented Kenny from signing agreements that could have bankrupted him. "You saved my financial life," Kenny told Elena during one of their weekly review meetings. "That coffee spill was the best thing that could have happened to me." "Sometimes accidents aren't really accidents," Elena replied with a smile. "Sometimes they're opportunities in disguise." Working with Kenny gave Elena insights into the music industry that no law school could have provided. She learned about the creative process, about the relationship between artists and their audiences, about the balance between commercial success and artistic integrity. More importantly, she learned from Kenny's example about treating people with dignity regardless of their position or apparent importance. "You know what impressed me most about you that day?" Kenny asked her 6 months into their working relationship. "It wasn't your legal knowledge, though that was impressive. It was the fact that even when Steinberg was humiliating you, even when you had every reason to be defensive and angry, you stayed focused on solving the problem. You saw an issue that could hurt me, and you spoke up about it even though it meant risking your job." Elena considered this. "My father taught me that integrity isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when you think no one will ever know." When I saw those contract problems, I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen them, regardless of the consequences. Their professional relationship evolved into something deeper, not romantic, but a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared values. Kenny became Elena's mentor in understanding the entertainment industry, while Elena helped Kenny navigate an increasingly complex legal and technological landscape. Elena also brought fresh perspectives to Kenny's business that helped him connect with younger audiences and emerging markets. Her insights into Latino communities, Her understanding of immigration experiences and her knowledge of how younger generations consumed music helped Kenny's catalog reach new audiences in ways that felt authentic rather than opportunistic. "You've taught me that the music business isn't just about music," Elena told Kenny during one of their planning sessions. "It's about stories, about connections between people, about helping artists find their audiences and helping audiences find music that speaks to their experiences." 2 years after the coffee spill incident, Elena had built a small but successful practice specializing in entertainment law, with Kenny as her primary client and mentor. She had also started a pro bono program providing legal services to emerging Latino artists who couldn't afford traditional entertainment lawyers. "Every young artist deserves someone who believes in them," Elena explained to Kenny when he asked about her volunteer work. "You gave me that chance when I spilled coffee on million-dollar contracts. Now I want to give that same chance to others." Elena's success attracted attention from major law firms and entertainment companies, but she turned down lucrative offers to build her own practice focused on ethical representation and fair dealing. She had learned from Kenny that success wasn't just about maximizing income. It was about building relationships and doing work that mattered. The coffee spill that had seemed like a career-ending disaster became a legendary story in Nashville's entertainment community, illustrating how preparation and integrity could turn accidents into opportunities. Elena became known as the lawyer who had saved Kenny Rogers millions by paying attention to details that others had missed. But for Elena and Kenny, the story was about something more fundamental than money or career success. It was about the importance of seeing people's potential regardless of their current circumstances, about the value of hard work and preparation meeting opportunity, and about how one moment of courage in speaking truth to power could change the trajectory of multiple lives. "That coffee spill taught me something important," Kenny reflected during one of his final interviews before retiring from active business management. "It reminded me that the most valuable insights often come from unexpected sources, and that dismissing people based on their job titles or backgrounds is not just morally wrong, it's strategically stupid." Elena, who had by then established herself as one of Nashville's most respected entertainment attorneys, kept a small coffee cup on her desk as a reminder of the day that changed her life. When young lawyers asked her for career advice, she would tell them the story of how she had ruined million-dollar contracts and ended up building her dream career as a result. "Preparation and opportunity," she would say, touching the coffee cup gently. "They don't always meet in the ways you expect. But when they do, you have to be ready to recognize the moment and act on it, even if it means taking risks that seem terrifying at the time." 5 years after their first meeting, Kenny asked Elena to handle the legal aspects of establishing a scholarship program for first-generation college students pursuing careers in entertainment law. The Kenny Rogers Elena Vasquez Scholarship became one of the most prestigious awards in its field, helping dozens of young people follow Elena's path from economic uncertainty to professional success. "This scholarship represents everything I learned from our friendship," Kenny said at the program's launch ceremony. "That talent and determination exist in all communities, that everyone deserves a chance to pursue their dreams, and that sometimes the best investments are the ones you make in people who remind you of your own younger self." Elena's acceptance speech that evening focused on the power of mentorship and the responsibility that comes with success. "Mr. Rogers saw potential in someone serving coffee when everyone else saw only a mistake," she said. "He taught me that success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about how many people you help achieve their own dreams along the way." The scholarship program continued to grow, eventually expanding to include mentorship components and internship opportunities. Recipients learned not just legal skills but also the values that Kenny and Elena shared: integrity, hard work, respect for others, and the understanding that true success comes from lifting others up rather than climbing over them. What made the Rogers Vasquez Scholarship Program unique wasn't just its financial support, but its holistic approach to developing future legal professionals. Each recipient was paired with a mentor from Elena's growing law firm, received summer internships at entertainment companies within Kenny's network, and attended quarterly workshops on ethics, negotiation, and client relations. The program's motto, inscribed on a plaque in Elena's office, read, "Excellence recognizes excellence regardless of where it originates." 10 years after the coffee spill, Elena was invited to speak at Harvard Law School about ethics in entertainment law. During her presentation, she told the story of her first meeting with Kenny Rogers, emphasizing how preparation, integrity, and the courage to speak up had transformed what seemed like a disaster into the opportunity of a lifetime. "The lesson isn't that you should spill coffee on important documents," Elena told the Harvard students with a smile. The lesson is that you should always be prepared for opportunity, even when it comes disguised as catastrophe. And you should never be afraid to speak truth to power when you see something that needs to be said. Her presentation resonated deeply with the students, many of whom came from privileged backgrounds and had never considered how their assumptions about who belongs in legal spaces might blind them to valuable perspectives. Elena shared specific examples from her practice where solutions to complex legal problems had come from unexpected sources. A paralegal who caught a critical statute of limitations issue, a cleaning staff member who noticed security vulnerabilities in client file handling, and a young associate whose different cultural background helped navigate international contract negotiations. After her presentation, a young student from a working-class background approached Elena with questions about breaking into entertainment law without family connections or financial advantages. Elena spent an hour with the student, sharing practical advice and encouragement, then connected her with internship opportunities through the scholarship program. "Pay it forward," Elena told the student. "Someone believed in me when I had nothing but potential and determination. Now it's my turn to believe in others." This conversation would later inspire Elena to establish coffee talk sessions at law schools across the country. Informal gatherings where successful professionals shared their stories and connected with students from diverse backgrounds. These sessions became legendary for their authenticity and practical value, with participants often describing them as more valuable than formal networking events. As Kenny entered his 80s, he gradually stepped back from active business management, but his friendship with Elena remained strong. They continued to meet monthly for lunch, discussing industry developments, Elena's growing practice, and the scholarship recipients who were beginning their own careers in entertainment law. Their monthly lunches had become an institution, held at the same restaurant where Kenny had first offered Elena the consulting contract. The staff knew them well, always preparing their usual table by the window overlooking the city skyline. These conversations ranged from industry gossip to philosophical discussions about success, mentorship, and the responsibility that comes with influence. "You know what I'm most proud of?" Kenny asked Elena during one of these lunches. "Not the money we saved by catching those contract problems, though that was significant. I'm proud that we built something together that helps other people find their own opportunities." Elena nodded, understanding what he meant. Their partnership had evolved beyond business into a legacy of mentorship and opportunity creation that would continue long after both of them had retired. The scholarship program had graduated 47 students by that point, with many now working at prestigious law firms, entertainment companies, and even starting their own practices. "That coffee spill was the luckiest accident of my life," Elena reflected. "But I've learned that luck is really just what happens when preparation meets opportunity, and someone is brave enough to act on it." Kenny smiled, remembering the young woman who had stood in his conference room, soaked with coffee and facing professional humiliation, but who had nonetheless found the courage to speak up about problems she had identified in his contracts. That moment had taught him as much as it had taught her about the importance of creating spaces where truth could be spoken without fear of retribution. "Elena," he said, "I want you to promise me something. Anything. When you're established in your career, when you're successful and comfortable, don't forget to look for the next person serving coffee who might have something important to say. Don't let success make you blind to potential in unexpected places." Elena reached across the table and squeezed Kenny's hand. "I promise. And I promise to teach that same lesson to everyone who comes after me." This promise became the foundation for Elena's leadership philosophy. She instituted listening tours in her firm, where senior partners would spend time with support staff, asking about their observations and ideas for improvement. She created anonymous suggestion systems and regular town halls where anyone could raise concerns or propose solutions. Her firm became known not just for its legal expertise, but for its inclusive culture and innovative practices. Their story became a case study in business schools and law schools, illustrating how diverse perspectives and inclusive hiring practices could prevent costly mistakes and unlock hidden value. But for Elena and Kenny, it remained what it had always been, a reminder that everyone deserves to be seen, heard, and given the chance to contribute their unique talents to the world. The case study titled "The Coffee Spill: A Study in Recognizing Hidden Talent" was taught in courses on organizational behavior, leadership, and diversity management. Students analyzed how traditional power structures can blind leaders to valuable insights and how creating inclusive environments benefits everyone. The case highlighted specific metrics. Companies with diverse leadership teams were 35% more likely to identify critical risks early, and organizations with inclusive cultures showed 67% higher employee engagement scores. The coffee cup on Elena's desk became a symbol for her entire practice, representing the principle that great ideas and crucial insights can come from anyone, regardless of their current position or apparent status. She made sure that everyone who worked for her, from senior partners to administrative assistants, felt valued and heard. The cup itself was unremarkable, a simple white ceramic mug with the coffee shop's logo that had long since faded. But its placement on Elena's desk, visible to everyone who entered her office, served as a constant reminder of the transformative power of authentic communication and mutual respect. Clients often asked about its significance, leading to conversations about the importance of creating environments where everyone's voice matters. Kenny taught me that true leadership means creating environments where everyone's best ideas can surface, Elena would tell her staff during their monthly meetings. We never know when the next great insight will come from someone we might otherwise overlook. These monthly staff meetings became legendary within the firm for their openness and productivity. Elena would begin each meeting by asking what she called the coffee cup question. What have you noticed that the rest of us might be missing? This simple question led to numerous innovations in case management, client service, and firm operations. It also created a culture where speaking up was not just accepted, but expected and rewarded. The million-dollar mistake had become a million-dollar lesson about human potential, professional opportunity, and the importance of looking beyond surface appearances to recognize the value that exists in every person. And it all started with a young woman, a coffee cup, and the courage to speak truth in a room full of people who thought they already had all the answers. Years later, when Elena's firm had grown to over 200 employees and multiple offices, she would still tell the coffee spill story to new hires during orientation. It served as both inspiration and instruction, reminding everyone that their current position was not the limit of their potential contribution. Many employees later credited this story with giving them the confidence to speak up about important issues or innovative ideas that might otherwise have gone unshared. The legacy of that single moment of authentic communication continued to ripple outward, creating opportunities, preventing mistakes, and building bridges between people who might otherwise have remained strangers. It proved that sometimes the most profound transformations begin with the simplest acts of courage and the willingness to see potential in unexpected places. Thank you so much for joining me for this incredible story of how one moment of apparent disaster became a life-changing opportunity for two remarkable people. Kenny Rogers and Elena Vasquez remind us that success often comes disguised as failure, and that the most important skill we can develop is the ability to see potential in unexpected places. This story perfectly illustrates a fundamental truth about human nature and opportunity. We are all walking around with untapped potential, waiting for the right moment, the right circumstances, or sometimes just the right person to recognize what we're truly capable of. Elena had been working at that coffee shop for months, quietly observing, learning, and developing insights that could transform the business. But it took an accidental spill and Kenny's willingness to truly listen for that wisdom to surface. Think about the people in your own life, your colleagues, your neighbors, the person who serves you coffee every morning, the janitor who works quietly in your building. How many of them have brilliant ideas, creative solutions, or valuable perspectives that remain unheard simply because no one has bothered to ask? How many Elenas are working right under our noses, possessing exactly the insights we need to solve our biggest challenges? Kenny's response in this story teaches us something profound about leadership and human connection. When Elena spoke up, he didn't dismiss her because of her position or her accent. He didn't assume that someone working behind a counter couldn't possibly understand the complexities of running a business. Instead, he listened with genuine curiosity and respect. This kind of open-minded leadership, the ability to recognize wisdom regardless of its source, is what separates truly successful people from those who remain trapped by their own assumptions. Elena's courage to speak up, despite the risk of overstepping boundaries, shows us the power of preparation meeting opportunity. She hadn't just been passively observing the coffee shop's operations. She had been actively thinking, analyzing, and developing solutions. When her moment came, she was ready. This reminds us that we should always be preparing for opportunities we can't yet see, developing our skills and insights even when it seems like no one is watching. The transformation of Elena's life, from struggling student to successful consultant, didn't happen overnight, but it began with a single moment of authentic communication. This teaches us that breakthrough moments often look nothing like we expect them to. They don't always come dressed in business suits or announced with fanfare. Sometimes they come wearing a coffee-stained apron, speaking with a nervous voice, but carrying exactly the message we need to hear. This story also highlights the ripple effects of recognizing potential in others. When Kenny invested in Elena's ideas and growth, he didn't just change her life, he transformed his own business and likely inspired countless others who witnessed this interaction. Acts of recognition and encouragement create expanding circles of positive change that extend far beyond the original moment. In our fast-paced, hierarchical world, it's easy to overlook the quiet voices around us. We often assume that the loudest person in the room or the one with the most impressive title has the best ideas. But Elena's story reminds us that innovation and wisdom can come from anywhere, often from the people who are closest to the actual problems we're trying to solve. If this story touched your heart and inspired you to look for the hidden talents around you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need encouragement to speak up for their dreams. Subscribe to our channel for more stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and let me know in the comments below. Have you ever had a coffee spill moment that turned into an unexpected opportunity? I'd love to hear your story. Maybe you were the person who spoke up when everyone else stayed silent. Or perhaps you were the one who recognized potential in someone others had overlooked. These moments of connection and recognition are what make life truly meaningful and what drive real progress in our world. Remember, as Elena learned that day, preparation and courage can turn any accident into an opportunity. Stay ready, stay brave, and never be afraid to speak up when you see something that needs to be said. But also remember Kenny's example. Stay open to wisdom from unexpected sources, and be willing to invest in potential even when it doesn't come in the package you expected. Until next time, keep believing in the power of human potential to surprise and inspire us all. Keep your eyes open for the Elenas in your own life. And remember that you might be someone else's Kenny Rogers, with the power to change a life simply by choosing to truly listen.